The room was louder than it needed to be. A long table had been arranged across the private dining room, polished wood reflecting the soft yellow light above it. Plates clinked gently. Someone shifted a chair across the floor. The air conditioning hummed quietly along the ceiling vents. My Uncle Daniel stood near the center of the table with a glass in his hand. It was my grandmother's 70th birthday dinner, and nearly everyone from the family had come. Cousins, spouses, a few family friends who had known her for decades. Daniel had always been the one who spoke during these things. He cleared his throat lightly and tapped the side of his glass with a spoon. The room softened into attention. "Family," he said, smiling with the practiced ease of someone used to the role. "It's good to see everyone together again." Polite nods followed. Then his eyes shifted toward me. "And it's especially nice," he continued, "to see our younger generation taking an interest in family matters." A few people glanced in my direction. Daniel tilted his head slightly. "Although," he added lightly, "some of them are better suited to organizing paperwork than making decisions." A few quiet laughs circled the table. Someone coughed into a napkin. My cousin Emily lowered her eyes into her wine glass. Daniel raised his glass again. "Still," he said, smiling wider now, "every family needs someone reliable to handle the small things." The laughter came a little more comfortably that time. I didn't say anything. My fork rested quietly beside the plate. Across the table, the candles flickered faintly against the polished surface. They didn't realize something had already changed. Being underestimated has a strange rhythm to it. Over time, people stop examining the assumptions they've made about you. Your role becomes fixed in their minds, like furniture in a room they walk through every day. Reliable, quiet, helpful, the one who handles details, not the one who makes decisions. That description had followed me through most family gatherings, not because anyone had said it directly at first, but because it slowly became convenient for everyone. If someone needed records located, I would find them. If someone needed schedules aligned, I would arrange them. If documents needed scanning, sending, filing, or confirming, my phone would usually light up with the request. Over time, people stop asking whether the person doing those things might understand more than they appear to. Sometimes I wonder how many people have experienced that moment, sitting in a room where others speak about decisions as if you're not fully part of them. Not excluded exactly, just tolerated on the edges. If that kind of quiet resilience makes sense to you, subscribing to the channel helps these stories reach others who recognize it. And if you've ever been underestimated in a room where everyone assumed they understood your role, you can share that experience in the comments. For most of my life, those gatherings followed the same pattern. But today wasn't like the others. In our family, authority had always moved along predictable lines. My grandmother, Margaret, built most of the family's wealth through a small chain of medical supply companies she started in the late 80s. By the time I was born, the business was already stable. Her 3 children, Daniel, Robert, and my mother, each occupied a different position inside that structure. Daniel, the oldest, handled public relationships. He attended meetings, negotiated contracts, and spoke at events. Robert preferred operations, warehouses, supplier relationships, logistics. My mother stayed mostly outside the business after I was born, though she still held shares through the family trust. At family events, the hierarchy was visible even without anyone describing it. Daniel spoke first. Robert filled in details. Others listened. My place inside that system had always been practical. When I finished university, I began helping my grandmother organize digital records for the trust. It started as a temporary project. Old files, scanned documents, updated contact lists. Nothing dramatic. At least that's how everyone described it. But the pattern became familiar. I remember one Thanksgiving when Daniel asked if anyone had seen a specific vendor agreement. While the room debated where it might be stored, I quietly opened the archive folder on my laptop and forwarded it to him. Another time, Robert spent half an hour trying to confirm the renewal date on a distribution contract. The answer had been listed in the trust records I'd organized months earlier. Those moments reinforced a simple assumption. I was useful, but not influential. Reliable, but not central. They assumed compliance was permanent. The work itself was not complicated, but it was extensive. Over the years, my grandmother's trust accumulated thousands of documents. Vendor contracts, property records, board meeting minutes, share certificates, legal amendments. The trust had originally been structured decades earlier, long before digital storage was common. Most of the files existed in paper boxes stacked in a storage room behind her office. When I began organizing them, the goal was simply to create a searchable archive. I scanned each document, tagged them by year, linked related agreements, updated contact information for the attorneys and advisors who had worked with my grandmother across the years. Everyone saw it as clerical work, which, in many ways, it was. But access changes the way you understand systems. When you review contracts line by line, you begin to notice patterns in how authority is defined. Certain clauses repeat. Governance structures appear across different documents. Decision chains become visible. One signature activates another. One amendment quietly reshapes an older agreement. The trust itself had undergone several revisions over the years. Some were minor. Others adjusted how control would pass if circumstances changed. None of those revisions had attracted much attention during family conversations, because they were written in legal language, and because they were stored in files most people rarely opened. But access teaches you what authority often ignores. 3 weeks before my grandmother's birthday dinner, she asked me to stop by her office. It was a small room attached to the back of her house. The same storage boxes I had digitized years earlier were still stacked along one wall, though most of the important documents now existed in the encrypted archive on my laptop. She sat behind her desk with 2 folders arranged neatly in front of her. "Daniel thinks the trust should be simplified," she said. Her voice was calm. "Fewer administrative steps." I nodded. That suggestion had appeared in several recent board meeting notes. "What do you think?" she asked. I opened the folders. Inside were draft amendments prepared by the family attorney. One proposed removing several oversight provisions that had existed in the trust for years. Another suggested consolidating decision authority under a single managing beneficiary. "Daniel would likely hold that position," she said. I read through the clauses slowly. Some of the language was familiar. Other sections created new authority structures that hadn't existed before. After a few minutes, I pointed to a paragraph near the end of the document. "This clause conflicts with the governance structure from the 2008 amendment," I said. She leaned forward slightly. "Explain." I opened the archived copy of the earlier amendment and placed both documents side by side. The conflict was subtle. If both clauses remained active, operational authority could become ambiguous, which meant any managing beneficiary would still require confirmation from the trustee in certain scenarios. My grandmother watched quietly as I traced the language. Finally, she smiled faintly. "I wondered if you would notice that." The revised documents were adjusted the following week. 2 signatures were added. The attorney confirmed the update through encrypted email. And one line inside the trust records quietly clarified the governance structure. By the time we gathered that evening, the structure had already changed. Daniel's speech continued as the servers began bringing dessert plates to the table. Chocolate torte for most people. Lemon custard for my grandmother. He rested one hand on the back of a chair while speaking. "Our family has been fortunate," he said. "But maintaining something across generations requires steady hands." A few people nodded. "Experience matters," he continued. "Institutional memory. Responsibility." His gaze moved slowly across the table. When new ideas appear, enthusiasm can sometimes outpace perspective. There were small smiles at that. "I think all of us understand that leadership requires patience," he said, "and a willingness to respect the structures that built what we have." His eyes settled on me again. Not just good intentions. The comment landed lightly, almost politely. But the meaning was clear. Someone at the far end of the table shifted their chair. Robert cleared his throat. Daniel lifted his glass again. "Well," he said casually, "if anyone would like to add something." He paused, waiting. He asked if anyone wanted to add something. For a moment, no one spoke. The servers had finished placing the dessert plates down the length of the table. A fork touched porcelain somewhere near the end of the room. I looked toward my grandmother first. She gave a small nod. Then I turned back to Daniel. "There is one clarification," I said. My voice didn't rise above the level of the room. Several people looked up. "Last month's trust amendment adjusted the governance language from the 2008 revision," I continued. Daniel's smile held for a second longer. "The clause regarding managing beneficiary authority now references trustee confirmation under Section 4. Silence began to spread gradually across the table. "The updated document was finalized on the 12th, I said. Robert frowned slightly. Daniel tilted his head. "And that means," he asked. It means operational authority remains subject to trustee oversight in situations involving asset transfers or structural changes. I rested my hands lightly on the edge of the table. The trustee designation was also confirmed during the amendment. No one moved for several seconds. "Which is?" Daniel asked. I answered simply, "I am the trustee." A fork stopped halfway to someone's mouth. Across the table, the lemon custard in front of my grandmother remained untouched. The room did not erupt. Instead, it shifted. Slowly, Robert looked down at his phone. Emily leaned toward her husband and whispered something under her breath. Daniel's expression remained steady, though the smile had faded slightly. "Since when?" he asked. "The confirmation was included in the amendment filed 2 weeks ago," I said. Robert was scrolling through something on his screen. "I didn't see that notice," he muttered. "The attorney circulated it through the trust governance list," I said. My grandmother took a small sip of water. Someone at the far end of the table began reading something quietly from their phone. Daniel exhaled through his nose. "Well," he said carefully, "that's administrative language. In practice," he added, "the family still operates the same way." No one answered. Another phone lit up. A message notification appeared on Robert's screen. He read it, then looked up slowly. "Oh," he said. The word carried a different weight than the room had heard before. About 10 minutes later, Daniel approached me near the hallway outside the dining room. His voice was lower now. "Walk with me for a moment," he said. We stepped toward the quieter side corridor. The air conditioning hummed more loudly there. "I think we may have misunderstood each other earlier," he said. I waited. "The trustee role is primarily administrative," he continued. "You manage documentation, oversight procedures." "That's correct," I said. "But strategic direction still belongs with experienced leadership. Strategic decisions involving asset transfers require trustee confirmation," I replied. He studied my face for a few seconds. "Your grandmother may have intended that as a safeguard," he said. "That's how the clause is written." Daniel nodded slowly. "Well," he said, "we'll need to discuss how this arrangement functions going forward." "I'm available for those conversations," I said. He gave a thin smile. "Good." For the first time in years, he sounded careful. The following morning, several messages appeared in my inbox. The family attorney had sent an updated governance summary. Vendor account managers received notices confirming trustee oversight for structural approvals. Board members were copied on the documentation. Nothing dramatic. Just confirmations. Access permissions adjusted quietly across the internal portal. Financial institutions updated contact protocols. Meeting agendas began including trustee review for certain categories of decisions. Every step followed procedures that had existed in the trust for years. They simply hadn't been activated before. Back at the restaurant that evening, dessert plates were being cleared away. Conversations had resumed, though the tone had softened. I placed my napkin beside the plate and stood. My grandmother caught my eye across the table. She gave another small nod. I collected my coat from the chair behind me. No one asked where I was going. The hallway lights were dimmer than the dining room. When the door closed behind me, the noise from the table faded into a low murmur. I didn't need the microphone. Authority is often associated with visibility. The person standing at the front of the room. The voice making announcements. The figure who speaks first when decisions are discussed. But structures rarely depend on visibility alone. Contracts define boundaries quietly. Governance documents describe authority without raising their voices. A single clause inside a trust agreement can shape outcomes more permanently than any speech. For years, my role in the family appeared simple. Organize records. Maintain archives. Confirm details. People saw the surface of those tasks and assumed they understood the entire function. They rarely asked what access those responsibilities created, or how familiarity with a system changes the way you move within it. Underestimation has a practical advantage. It allows you to observe without interruption, to understand the mechanics behind decisions others treat as routine. And sometimes, when the moment arrives, the structure simply updates itself. Control doesn't announce itself. It simply updates the record.